Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to have you all here today. Thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to introduce our presenters today. We're going to be talking today specifically about Western Governors University and how they have been reimagining some of their approach to student support in their general education courses through InScribe's digital communities and also a partnership with MindEdge Learning. We are going to introduce ourselves in a second, but in the short term, we would love to know who we have with us. So if you have a minute, please just in the chat, drop in your name, your institution, your role at that organization. And I always like to say, if there is something specific that you're thinking about or working on that brought you here today, something you really hope that we have a chance to talk about, feel free to drop it in there. We will do a lot of and then over the course of the event, you can also put your questions in the chat. I am joined today along with the panel by my colleague, Danielle Bonner. Danielle, your picture in the chat is me, so that's kind of funny. That's like a weird, that's going to give everyone some weird cognitive dissonance. But so I'm joined by Danielle Bonner. She is going to help us keep track of what's happening in the chat. She is fully empowered to interrupt us at any time, but we do like to weave your questions into the conversation along the way. So again, keep those coming in there. That would be great. We are recording this session today, so we'll send that out after the event so you can all have a copy or share it with anybody who wasn't able to be here. And with that, oh, and then one other thing. So we're trying something a little different today. After the webinar, we are going to jump over to what we call a networking lounge, sponsored by one of our good friends at InSpace, which is a video conferencing tool for education. And so we welcome you all to come join us over there. At the end of the conversation, Danielle will drop a link to that space into the Zoom, and you can just follow that link, and our presenters will be there, as well as Danielle and myself. If you have any additional questions, or if you just want to chat and get to know everybody a little more in person, so to speak. So with that, I will have us all introduce myself. I probably should have done this when I started talking, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Katie Kapler. I am co-founder and CEO of InScribe, which is a virtual community platform. I'll talk a little bit about what we do in a minute, but for now, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Chantal Link.
Thank you, Katie. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are located. I'm Chantal Link, and I serve as Director of Student Persistence and Academic Services for Western Governors University. Have been with WGU now for 2 years, have worked in both the traditional and non-traditional higher education setting, and super excited about being here today.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you. Dr. Sanders, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Jenny Sanders. I'm the Vice President of Faculty Experience and Academic Services at Western Governors University. And I've been with the university for about 9 years, serving in a variety of instructional and leadership and innovation roles. And we are so excited to talk about our experience using InScribe in our gen ed courses, and to hear from you all as well, the things that you're trying and that you're interested in when it comes to online community.
Wonderful. And I'm also really excited today to welcome Chris Edwards to the table. So MindEdge Learning, he'll talk in a minute a little bit about their product, but it's kind of a partnership between InScribe and MindEdge and WGU that has made all of this possible. So I'm excited that we're all here to tell the story together. So Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, golly, thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. As Katie mentioned, I'm Chris Edwards. I work on strategy and partnerships at MindEdge. I think it's almost 20 years now in and around education, especially ed tech. All those things that you use, I've worked with on the company side for a long time. It's been about 4 years at MindEdge, and it's been fantastic. You'll learn a little bit more about what we do and who we service, but it's just great to be able to serve an adult learner in ways that help them succeed. And so I'm real excited to hear the WGU story and tell you the very small part that MindEdge is playing in that growth and development of communities. So thanks to everybody for having us today.
Wonderful. It's a great panel, and we are going to have a great discussion today. And just to set the stage, kind of why we thought this event would be particularly valuable today. We know that almost any post-secondary degree includes some set of general education courses that students are going through. And for many students, this is essentially like the gate that they need to get through in order to find their path, find their passion, and complete that degree. But also for a lot of students, the bar is very high to get through these courses. And they can sometimes, without the right support modalities and the right engagement levels, be the reason that students can't persist or that they sort of give up on their learning journey. And so and this is especially challenging with online students, right, where they're learning at a distance and often learning in isolation. So we know that finding new and novel ways to support these learners and kind of helping them build the momentum that they need during this time is really, really important. And we were just so impressed by how Western Governors University was thinking about that and approaching it. We thought it would be a story that would really resonate with lots of different individuals. So with that, I'm going to welcome Jenny in to tell us a little bit more about WGU. I'm guessing most people on this webinar have heard of them, but tell us a little bit, Jenny, just about the university and the unique student populations that you serve.
Yeah, thank you. So WGU, we are about 25 years old, founded in the late 90s by 19 Western governors to create a university that would work for the learners that are not well served by traditional higher ed. And these are often adult learners that need a lot more flexibility in terms of time and space in order to do their studies. And we are a fully accredited, online, very career focused university that offers bachelor's and master's degrees. And we're competency based, which means that rather than having the semester time that we're offering a course or learning to a student be constant, we actually hold the learning constant. We ensure that we are working with our learners to learn the competencies, to demonstrate the competencies they need to show that, yes, I do understand what's happening here. So rather than holding the time constant with the learning varying, we hold the learning constant and let the time vary based on the needs of the learner. And we typically serve adult learners. Our average age is around 35 years old. And we currently have about 142,000 learners. They start, we offer start dates at the beginning of each month. So 12 different terms going in a year. And we have recently graduated our 300,000th graduate.
Wow.
And we couldn't be more proud of the way that we're able to expand that avenue of opportunity through accessible, really on-demand, self-paced, competency-based learning that really helps our learners demonstrate that they have the skills they need to get the jobs they want.
Wonderful. What a great introduction. And that's a great milestone to be celebrating. So congratulations to you guys on that. Thank you for that introduction, Jenny. I'm just going to take a quick minute to talk a little bit about InScribe for anyone who is not familiar with our platform. So we are a virtual community platform, and we are designed to create spaces where students can connect with peers, faculty, and staff. Anytime they have a question, they need help, or they just want to reach out and connect with another individual. We tend to work at many different places across the student journey. So anywhere from, pre-admit students during the application process. You might have communities that live what we call above the course level. So creating peer communities that connect learners in spaces to chat. And then we do a lot of work in the academic space, creating learning communities around curriculum that allow students to talk about what they're studying and get just-in-time support on their learning. And that's the use case we're really gonna see showcased here today in our work with Western Governors University. But you can see on the screen here, anytime we deploy one of our communities, we're really looking at three main outcomes for learners. Are we increasing their sense of satisfaction and their sense of belonging? Are we actually improving outcomes for learners? So helping more students persist? And are we helping them gain more confidence in their ability to persist in their learning and succeed? I will say we always balance this with a mindset to efficiency for the institution. So as we improve all of these experiences for students, are we also helping the institutions we partner with save time and provide student support in a more economical fashion? We also work, this is going to be a bit of a theme today. We also work a lot with non-traditional students. So older students that are returning, students learning online, working, parenting, that population for whom having regular and flexible access to others is not always something that they get, naturally by being on campus or by living in dorms with others. So that's our mission and our vision. So you'll hear a little bit more about how that has worked into this solution later. But now I'd like to also ask Chris to jump in and tell us a little bit about MindEdge. And then you'll have all three pieces, and then we'll talk later about how they come together.
Nice. Thanks, Katie. So MindEdge has been around since '98, which in online learning, like I associate '98 with like CompuServe squeaks and squiggles out of my dial-up modem. But truly, MindEdge has been on this mission to improve the way the world learns since then. And we kind of fit those topics into a bunch of different buckets, but all really focused on that same audience, that adult learner who needs to know and learn a thing. And we're trying to make things as simple, as straightforward and streamlined as we can be in the content that we build in order to do that. So since we've been around so long, we do have content in a bunch of different ways and places, right? Stuff that institutions offer for credit, which is what we do with WGU in certain respects, but then a lot more in professional development and continuing education as well. And if you go to the next slide, Katie, we really can kind of bundle those offerings into a couple of different things, whether it's some of the industry content that we have that's aligned with partners that we use for stackable credentials, it's developmental content that's really kind of co-recs for student success, or a custom courseware configuration like what we do with WGU. I think our goal is to be the best partner we can be for the best investment of time a learner can make. And in this particular case, really trying to help do whatever we can do on our side to meet the learner where they're at, which is why I'm so excited about community. But we all, I think, know that community in learning is essential. A lot of folks need that more than others to help figure out a problem or to help connect with others. And so being able to deploy that is a good thing. We at MindEdge have deployed InScribe as a community partner for a credential that we built called PM Skills, right? Which is part of this little story, but just kind of shows, again, all adult learners in all the ways, really need that level of community. So that's a little bit about MindEdge.
Wonderful. And perfect lead in. And I love the emphasis on community, because I think, especially for this population of individuals in the non-traditional space, community provides a scaffolding and a support network that can help students, persist when times get tough, or even when small issues can be resolved quickly, they don't become large issues that might ultimately get in the way. I also believe community is not one person's job, right? It's something that the institution is thinking about, the partners that you bring on board should be thinking about. And that's why I think this story is so great, because it's this idea of three different people, three different groups thinking about community and how we could weave them together to make positive impact. So I'm going to have Jenny tell us a little bit about what was going on with the learners at WGU. How did you identify that there might be an opportunity to do something a little bit differently in these courses?
Yeah, thank you. So I think you actually highlighted several things that are common themes for us as we're thinking about community at WGU, and in particular in our gen ed courses, where students are new to this, to the WGU environment, and sometimes these can be the courses that, as you say, can be a little bit of a gateway. Not that we intend them to be, but it's where they're getting their feet wet and kind of deciding, how am I going to be a learner here? And because it is asynchronous and it is, for the most part, self-paced at WGU, it's easy for learners to feel kind of alone. And we'd heard from them in various ways that they would love to connect more with peers. We know how important peer learning is too, just for that durable learning and feeling that connection and belonging within a course, within an experience at an institution. And we wanted to make sure we could do it in a way that fit into their lives. So something that allowed both, asynchronous support to get answers to their questions. And I would say you know, in addition to the support piece, there's also what we're seeing, and I know Chantel will highlight this a little bit later, but also a way to like celebrate together. When you have a win, being able to share that with other people just really helps to, you know, compound those feelings of accomplishment and momentum as you're moving forward. So we really were looking for ways to do this in a more scalable way within our gen ed courses, and loved that InScribe was already, you know, embedded into the MindEdge learning resource. It was super easy for us to be able to launch it. And so we wanted to give it a try in 3 of our gen ed courses that we know tend to be more difficult for some of our learners, and also in that first term, that kind of first part of their experience.
That's wonderful. And then did we touch on everything on here? I don't want to go past this before.
I think pretty
You did a
close,
great job.
yeah.
You already knew what was coming. So I wrote down that term durable learning. I just love that. I think that idea of like reinforcing and persisting, but I also like what you said about celebrating wins, because we often talk about these communities as places to go when you're stuck or need help, or, you know, you're sort of undoing a problem, but they also can be places to go when you're excited, when you found something you want to share, to your point, when you want to celebrate a win. So I think having both of those lenses and knowing that students are craving the opportunity for both sides of those peer engagement is extremely relevant, and not just for, you know, an institution like WGU is doing something slightly differently with competency-based. I mean, we hear that from many institutions. How do I create more opportunities for my students to engage in that way? So I think this challenge / opportunity is probably not unique just to the WGU organization. With that in mind, would love to hear a little bit from the audience as well. When you're thinking about peer engagement at your organization, when you're thinking about ways to give students spaces to collaborate, whether it's digital communities or something else, is this a challenge or opportunity that you've been thinking about? Are there ways that you have been working to solve this problem? We'd love to learn from you anything that you're working on, and maybe that you'd be willing to share with the other audience members. While that's coming in, I'm gonna turn the conversation slightly to talk a little more about the solution. So we have this set of learners. They have some unique challenges around time of day, when they're learning. They have voiced a desire to have more opportunities to collaborate with their peers. So Chantel, would you like to tell us a little bit about, having identified all of that, where you guys went in terms of designing a solution for these courses?
Thank you, Katie. I also want to call out our first year experience initiative. As part of our FYE initiative, we were looking at courses that our first term students often struggle with. And so we wanted to ensure that we were embedding and connecting them to resources that could help them and assist them along the journey. And so it was so important for us to find a resource that didn't require for them to search around or have a million clicks. We wanted it to be easily accessible. And we also wanted there to be more peer-to-peer collaboration and engagement. And so in partnership with our Gen Education leaders and instructors, these 3 courses were identified. And we have since rolled out a pilot. It has been about 2.5 months, and I can tell you that I have been really impressed with the engagement with our students and the feedback that we're receiving from our students as well as our instructors. I want to call out when we were designing the pilots, it was really important for us to also map out what the faculty expectations were. We know that our faculty want to respond. However, we don't want, and we didn't want to overwhelm them as well, because if you're having several students that are posting messages, that could be a lot for an instructor trying to keep up and manage. And so, and also we wanted to ensure that peers were engaging with each other, that peers were supporting each other. So it was very important for us to map out those expectations at the very beginning. We're looking for our peers to post and for peers to respond. We're looking for instructors to endorse those responses from students. And I will tell you that things rolled out so smoothly. You'll see, I know we've posted a few examples here, but the students are posting introductions, they're sharing stories, they're sharing advice. And so far, the model has been super positive for us. there's still a lot to learn. And so we're still very early in the pilot. And so I'm sure that our expectations will, they'll shift as we continue to learn more from this. But I can tell you that there's been very positive response and high engagement, tons of views, thousands of views from our students. And so you've probably seen that in the dashboard as well. Katie, I know we look at the messages pretty much every day to see what's happening inside of those communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And that model of sort of, well, first of all, I love the idea of setting the expectations for the community. I think oftentimes, you know, you want to just set the norms. Like, here's what we're going to do in this community. Here's what it's for. Here are our expectations of you as a community member. Here's what you can expect from us. And when that is all very clear, that tends to help the community just naturally form and function a lot smoother. So I love that you guys did that. And it just tends to make sure everybody is like participating in the way that you want them to participate. I know that part of the model too was about making sure that the community had the flexibility to be available when your students needed it. Like, want to talk a little bit about why that was important and how that manifested?
Absolutely. We have students on different time zones across the US. And so we wanted to make sure that students were able to connect throughout the day and receive that just-in-time support. I do like this right here, this screenshot where you can see some of the featured resources from instructors, from students. This Be My Valentine. If you notice here, there were actually several views for that. So this gives an idea of what the conversation. So you have some really light conversation, and then you have some, pretty heavy. Here's a study guide to help you and assist you along the way. And so once students enter into their community, they can see what some of those featured resources are right there, right in front of them, and they can instantly click on those. They don't have to search or dig around. They know that these are some of the featured resources. And so I do like the look and feel. It's very clean. And you can also see some of our students post right underneath those other featured resources. I think there's another screenshot as well. Okay, and this right here is how students enter the community. It was really important for us to have it in a place where students could easily, access it. They could easily see it and view it. Didn't have to dig around and search a million different places to be able to access the community. And so it's right here. I believe, Katie, that we're looking at embedding them in the modules, and it may be there, but certainly it's right here, right up front, once students enter into their course room.
And I did see a little bit in the chat, someone talking about having attempted to build communities for learners and sort of nobody showed up. And it was like, you have these empty hallways. And I will just touch on that quickly because I think this slide speaks to it. It varies a little bit on the type of community that you're building. But our experience and what our partnership with MindEdge and WGU was so good for was proximity can be really important. Like we have this sort of philosophy of the community should really come to the learner should not have to go seeking out the community. And so finding all the places that your students are already going, like into their curriculum to learn and practice, and providing easy access to the community directly there, that is going to lower the bar lower the sort of effort for your students to jump in and engage. Like it's context aware, it's right there when they need it. So there's lots of different ways that you can think about that: LMS, courseware, portal, websites. But I think that this was just done so elegantly, right in line with what the students are learning. They can jump right in and have those conversations. So that was really nice.
We have some additional questions in the
chat. I was
gonna
say, there's a bunch of questions coming in.
This was my opportunity to interrupt you. So here we are.
If you can help us organize that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no problem. So the first question is in regards to the LMS chat. What makes the InScribe communities that you have in the MindEdge courseware different than the LMS chat? And have you tried the LMS chat?
Is that for us?
Yeah. Well, I will tell them, WGU has their own LMS platform that they've built themselves. So they're not using a traditional platform like Canvas or one of the others.
Yeah.
But I also sort of to speak to that idea of chat versus this more curated community, and Chantel, jump in as well. There was somebody who mentioned using Slack, and that Slack can be kind of overwhelming for everybody. And what we have heard too is chat is sort of similar in the sense that it's more transactional. So it's great if you just want to have a quick banter back and forth. But one of the values of what WGU has been doing is that they're not only offering that space for conversation, but they're capturing each of those interactions and making them visible and searchable for the other students. So let's say it was an important question about the courseware, that question gets answered. That's now part of the repository. So the next student that comes into the community, they can easily search, find that answer, and get the answer that they need, get their question answered immediately, which is great for the student. It also means one less question that a faculty member needs to answer. So we hear all the time from faculty, oh, I get the same question 100 times every semester. But when you move it into this many-to-many model, you're really cutting down on those repeat questions. I think we've heard anywhere from 25 to 80% reduction actually in the number of questions I'm having to answer by bringing it into this shared space. So you don't have as much like that piece of the value proposition tends not to come with you when you're using a more transactional platform like a chat or a Slack.
So
sorry, Chantal, I jumped in there, but this is really your question to answer.
Well, and you sort of answered the next question as well. So can you implement these communities without faculty involvement and really having staff take most of the workload on them?
I mean, that's really up to you. How did you guys at WGU decide who you wanted to be what we call moderating or kind of leading your communities? Was that an easy, was it easy to identify them? It just kind of aligned with what you were already doing?
Well, we looked to our Gen Ed leadership to identify the individuals that would assist in that area. So we had a little bit of both, instructors and staff collaboration with getting things set up. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the institution, but I could see it being set up minus faculty. It depends on, what exactly you want that community to look like. But for us, it was in collaboration with both instructor team and staff members.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and we do have community examples where it's faculty who are monitoring the communities, some where it's other staff, some where they actually let the students moderate it themselves. So you really have a lot of flexibility in that. And to Chantel's point, it kind of just depends on the goal and design of how you want the community to be set up.
And that answers the next two questions as well, Katie. So can you run a course-based community with a small class, plus the additional question of, can you use it across multiple courses at a program level?
Yes and yes. So WGU, obviously, when we heard the numbers from Jenny earlier, is working at a very high scale, but that is not a requirement. You can certainly have communities that are smaller with a smaller set of students. All the same benefits, I think, exist. And at a more traditional university where you have multiple sections, you can bring them together in a single community if you want to. So you could have one community per section, or you could have 10 sections of math all come together and share a community if that would be advantageous. Do you have more, Danielle?
That's it for now. Chris is unmuted, so maybe Chris has something he'd like to add.
I did. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Katie. When we were talking about the integration of the MindEdge courseware, again, we're a real small part of that, right? But what's nice is that InScribe uses industry standards like LTI to integrate into things. So it's not hard, right? If you know LTI, you know how to get where you need to go. And what you see on the screen is Intro to Humanities, which we've worked with WGU for a long time. But one of the other courses this is in is applied healthcare stats, right? It's for nurses. And we know that's a really tricky course, right? And we also know, like Jeannie said, that everybody starts every month. And so there's just some concepts in that course that are hard, right? And not everybody's going through them at the same time. So the amazing durability of the community that can form topically around stuff that's just hard, that you have to work through as that working adult who's doing an asynchronous thing, having that evidence of community solving that problem. And then frankly, for other folks who do have to use a proper term-based LMS where stuff like that just gets locked away at the end of said term and you can't ever get to it, again, there's a lot of durability here that by putting it in the courseware, we're hoping to help facilitate not only in something like this, where you just find the community and you know it's a thing, but as Chantel mentioned, there's other sticky bits in these courses that if there's community assets, we can stick those links in places in the courseware that can really help the student. And I just think that's so powerful to have that community problem solving that may have happened a time ago, but was really effective, still be there today and reinforce why the rest of the community is so important. And that's why we were really excited to be able to help out and to kind of facilitate, is just to help that learner who's trying to do this on their own get the aha moment that says, man, I should contribute to this because it helps me do a thing. So just want to make sure that that made it out into the webinar verse here.
No, that's a great point. It really builds on itself, I think, over time, and then you can carry forward that knowledge and that learning to the next generation of students, so to speak. I did want to give you a chance, Chantel, to talk a little bit about some of the types of posts that you see in the community. I know you already touched on it a little bit, but we had some great examples here. So
there are so many wonderful examples, Katie, and we were actually just sharing another one in a meeting that I was in prior to this. And so this right here shows, I mean, this almost looks like, you know, they're advising. This is an advising moment for students, and, you know, they're encouraging them to connect with their instructor, and they wish they had done it sooner. And how this impacted them and how they were able to pass because of that experience with that instructor. And so these are the things that we were looking for. I mean, this student took out the time. This is a very detailed, I mean, this meant a lot, and it obviously meant a lot to the student to spell all this out for her classmates because she didn't have to. So this is just one prime example, and we're seeing a lot of these messages, and you can see at the bottom where the student is saying, thank you for the advice. So they are responding back. They're appreciating this. They love to share their success stories. And we're seeing a lot of that where students are saying, oh, I passed because I did this, or you should do this, or you should start here. And that's what we're looking for. We've seen where students have come in and they said, I don't know where to start. And their peers are saying, you should do this, you should do that. And so I just really appreciate how they're utilizing this platform, and they're utilizing it to their benefit. And you're seeing successes along the way. And so, yeah, this is a great example. There are so many to share. They're different, you know, we're seeing different themes in the courses with our nurses to, you know, our students that are in our intro to humanities. And so it's just been so wonderful to see. This one right here is another great example, you know, just providing words of encouragement to her peers. And, you know, this student right here saying, I'm glad I'm not alone. So these are the things that we like to see, we were hoping for. And so we're seeing it on a daily basis. It actually is how I start my day. And now my colleagues are starting to start their day this way, like, let's see what's happening in the communities. So it's so refreshing to see.
That's wonderful. And I would guess many people, I know it's something I continue to think about, and I think a lot of people we talk to, is this idea of imposter syndrome. You know, your students come in, they don't feel like they can do this, that they're not in the right place, but I'm the only one that thinks that, I'm the only one that's not getting it. And so all it takes is one person to be open or vulnerable or to share their story, and the number of other students that can benefit from that and provide that support, I think, is always very touching. I mean, absolutely. I would also start my day with that information if given the opportunity. Danielle, before I jump into the next section, I'd love to know if there are any other questions you'd like us to touch on.
In regards to placement of this community being post-enrollment and registration, I did follow up with an answer there in regards to communities in the enrollment space and how we did partner with WGU on a research project. So I shared that research project, Katie, in the chat.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Thank you, Danielle. And then you've already taken care of it. So I think just seeing these posts and the level of engagement and conversation between students would indicate to us that something is working here. But data is always good as well. So I want to talk a little bit about, we're kind of early days with these communities, been doing for a couple months, but from the WGU's perspective, what are you looking at as indicators to tell you that this is working and that this is something you want to continue to invest in? And I think, Jenny, we'll start with you with some of the data that you've been able to find and share.
Yeah, you bet. So as you said, early days in the pilot. So we'll certainly be looking over the next several months at course completion and continued persistence and things like that for these learners. But we do have a predictive model that takes into account a whole host of factors of engagement and things with our learners that we call our momentum indicator. And it updates every day. And so when we look at kind of a weekly average, it gives us a good idea of kind of, are they engaging more and like gaining momentum in the things that they're doing, or are they losing momentum depending on what's happening? So what you see here is a line graph and then kind of a difference histogram on where these momentum scores were for learners in these courses at the beginning, like when they very first started the course. And we did our best to do some matched pairs here. And you can see in C100, they were pretty close. The learners who engaged in InScribe, which is the golden line, started out about the same momentum score level as those who chose not to engage in InScribe, who were also starting the course at the same time. And what you see is that, luckily momentum was increasing for all of them, but for those who engaged in InScribe, it increased much more rapidly. And that was obviously great news. It's a good sort of leading indicator, and we're excited to see, what happens with the course completion and things like that over time. C784, this was that applied health statistics course that Chris was referring to. And you can actually see here, it was a little harder to match the pairs because there was a really strong preference for learners who started out with lower momentum to engage in InScribe. So, our interpretation of this, until we have, a bit more data to confirm, is that these are learners who suspected they might have some trouble, and they were looking for resources, right? They're engaging like, okay, who can help me? Where do I start? And you can see that, again, while momentum increased for all of them, it increased faster for the learners who were engaging in InScribe, even though they had started out at a lower momentum level. So this was really encouraging for us to see as like a really early indicator that when students engage, they're really seeing that benefit, and it's helping them move forward in that learning journey.
That's awesome. This is such great information, and probably a slightly different lens than some institutions think about measuring student progress, but I still think it's relevant in the sense that, like, we want to see our students maintain enthusiasm, staying on top of their work, continuing to complete. And so I love the idea that the community is helping to drive that and support that for students. I know a lot of people have been asking about faculty and how they feel about the communities. And Chantel, you had some examples of feedback that you had gotten from the faculty that I think you wanted to share.
Sure. So it's, of course, it's very important for us to know what are our faculty saying about this, and what do they see are the benefits for utilizing this in their course rooms. And so this is faculty feedback from one of our gen ed instructors that was so nice to share with us. And so what they've shared is that the experience has been positive, and we're seeing this from quite a few of the instructors that are working with this pilot. They call out that and this particular instructor called out a learning curve with some of the multimedia resources, and that's a learning for us, and that there are ways that we can provide and offer some additional training. And so these are things and notes that we're taking as we're going through this pilot as well. Also, the instructors are just as excited as we are about the sharing of the tips and the encouragement from students. And because they like it so much, they want to have more students participate. And so this instructor here provided an example of how many students right now currently enrolled. This was at the time that I requested some feedback, so I'm sure it's increased. But again, we have been in this pilot only for a couple months now. So what we do is we send communication out via email, and we have a megaphone announcement, which it drops down in the it's a shortened message for students to see inside of their portal. And so we'll continue to communicate out to students and remind them that this resource is available for them. But I can tell you that just based off of what we're seeing so far and how early we are, we've had some really high student engagement with this platform. So we'll continue to encourage our students to utilize this tool because we see so many benefits for them in doing so.
Yeah. And these numbers, this is not a required thing. Students aren't required to go in and participate in the community. It's really for them when they want to be there. So these are all students who have taken the time to self-select into the community and create their account through SSO. There are some ways you can pre-enroll your students into these communities so they sort of automatically get an enrollment and start to get notifications. But I like the idea that you're letting the students come to the community on their own terms and still seeing a really high uptake of participation in those spaces. And to your point, I think that's sort of a momentum that is building, like as students kind of learn that this is the space to go, what we tend to see is that curve of adoption increases over time. Any questions in there? Any questions, Danielle, that you'd like us to talk about?
Want to add anything to that, Jenny? To the question?
Just that I love the question because, of course, we want to know, for whom is this working? Because we have an access and equity mission at WGU. So we want to make sure that things that we're implementing are really helping everyone be more successful. So it's certainly something we'll be looking at as we move forward.
And I think that question was around demographic information beneath the analysis on who's participating and who's gaining benefit and success from the community. So yes, we are eager to continue to look at that with you as well, Jenny. So let's just talk quickly about some next steps on where we're going with these communities and learn a little bit about, what's in what the future holds. Jenny, you want to talk us through this?
Sure. And Chantel, feel free to add
yes,
any other things for sure. So, we're looking to see how our learners continue to engage. This is relatively new. Again, just a couple of months into the pilot here. And so we'd love to see how often they're using it. And if they're offered this in multiple courses, does that use change in subsequent courses, for example? And how are they engaging with each other? What are the resources that they're finding useful? Also for our faculty, are there different things that they're trying that are, perhaps more helpful in particular contexts or with, different points of a learning journey, for example? And of course, we know that sense of belonging and feeling like I'm part of a group that's going through this experience and not all by myself is something that's very, very important. And I know Chantel's team is going to be looking more deeply into that in particular. And then, of course, with the data, you saw the momentum indicator changes, and then we'll be looking for, completions of course, of the program themselves, the retention, and also satisfaction of our learners.
Absolutely. Yep. And there was something I was going to add to that when you were talking, then it went right out of my brain. Oh, well, it'll come back to me. So all great next steps, and we're excited to continue on that journey with you both and continuing to sort of see how the platform can evolve. As we talked about, I think students will gravitate naturally to a platform like this, especially those that are learning online. But when they continue to have access to spaces across multiple courses, across their entire program, you really build on that momentum and you see different types of interactions and sort of longer term interactions take place, which can be really interesting and rewarding. So with that, unless there are any additional questions you want us to touch on, Danielle, or anything else from the chat, we'll welcome any last minute questions for sure.
We can move over to the networking lounge and people can ask their questions live and chat with our presenters.
That would be great. So yes, we wanted to save some time to make sure we had an opportunity to give you, or we wanted to give you the opportunity to join us in the lounge. So first, I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today.